New York City is not only the center of international economics and the arts, it is also a nexus of the world's religions. In this metropolis of almost 9 million people, there are hundreds of faith traditions that are thriving. October 9, 2018, ICN collaborated with the Interfaith Center to bring together a roundtable of faith leaders from different traditions to discuss how we may promote peace, encourage mutual understanding, and build religious diversity.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aishwarya Narasimha Devra, and I'm a member of the United Nations Department of Public Information, non-governmental organization, also known as DPI NGO, Youth Steering Committee, and a global youth advocate. Hinduism, perhaps some of you may know, is one of the 5 major world religions and originated in the Indus Valley. The Indus Valley is in present-day Pakistan. The word Hindu comes from the name of the river Sindhu in northern India and is of Sanskritic origin. Hinduism is practiced in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, and in the South Asian region, Mauritius, Fiji, Guyana, and amongst the diaspora in immigrant communities, including Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States of America. One of the essential beliefs of Hinduism is that there is one God, but is represented in different forms. Hence, you will see many different idols and statues representing various aspects and idols of life. Hinduism is based on the notion of dharma, which means duty in Sanskrit, and the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth based on your actions or karma. And this is similar in other religions such as Buddhism, Jainism, a religion that stems from Hinduism, and Sikhism, another religion that came from the region of Punjab, India. And with regard to Hinduism, it's practiced differently in various countries. For example, in Nepal, Dasara, which is this time period, also known as Dashan, you have the celebration of the relation between brothers and sisters. So that's only in Nepal, but in India, it's in August. So you have these different regional diversities that help add to the diversity. And in conclusion, Hinduism is like any other religion that's also dedicated for all individuals to lead a meaningful life and in achieving peace. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, my dear brothers and sisters. I'm remembering myself for the first time I came to the United States as a political asylum seeker, and then I have been detained for a short time. In detention periods, in detention centers in this country, many services, the Christian services and also Muslim services, Fridays, and the different denominations has services. I was attending for every service. The one day, the officer asked me, hey, stop. What are you doing? Are you Muslim or Christian or what? And I said, I am human being first, and then Muslim. I'm celebrating the diversity, It is very, very proud situation for me because in my country, I couldn't feel this kind of richness, Islam is a not new religion. Islam is an ongoing message. Before me, we heard about the Hinduism. We're gonna hear about Buddhism, Judaism also, Christianity. And then I'm saying that, they are describing my religion as well. It is the same message. Have you ever heard that kill the people, kill them all? That kind of message from any religion? No, this is whole. As sister also indicated, it is a sort of message coming from divine being and achieving peace. That's it. Islam has some nuances, some differences, but the messages are the same. We are focusing on, as Muslims, we are focusing on the personal connections with God. In a day, an obligatory prayers, we have 5 times obligatory prayers. And also, we have Friday prayers as well, weekly. But as I said before, personal relationship with God is the highlighted issue in Islam. Yeah. As I said before, Islam is not a new invented religion. It is an ongoing message. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here, and I love this journey of all the different religions and points of view that we're sharing. I work at Park Avenue Christian Church, which is a church here in New York City, located at 85th and Park. And we are part of 2 denominations, the Disciples of Christ Church, as well as the United Church of Christ. So the Christian history, Christian church has many denominations. So you go from Catholic, and Catholics have also branch off in many types of Catholicism. And then you have the Protestant church, and then you have independent churches. And within that, you have different doctrines, and you have different beliefs in many ways. I think we're at a point where we need to do what I call backward theology. So what is your institution? In this case, I can speak for ours. What are we doing? And what is that doing reflecting theologically? Instead of emphasizing, this is what we believe, it's like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And if somebody just looks at that, what kind of theology does that reflect? And when we're dealing with a book like the Bible, just thousands and thousands of pages that span through millennia, and the UCC believes that God still speaks, right? So we have a document, we have a book that's ancient. It's ancient. So what does that mean? Does that mean that God no longer speaks? And where are those texts? So what texts do we use nowadays to sustain how God is speaking today? And the UCC Church talks about 3 loves: love of children, love of neighbor, and love of the earth. I think that we need to simplify, for Christians at least, that theology that affirms human rights, period. And I like the invitation that we got, which had to do with love. I don't see it. I was looking at the agenda for today. But that's what love means, in my opinion. And I think if our institutions, Christian, non-Christian, our religious institutions are not serving and not affirming human rights, we got to do backward thinking around that. And I think that's what Jesus stood for human rights. I think that's why he paid the price. Despite all the layers of stories, of manuscripts, one after the other. So I'm not emphasizing belief, I'm not emphasizing a book, I'm emphasizing hermeneutics. So what's important is what hermeneutics, what is my filter when I come to my sacred text? And what do I choose from that, right? And I'm thinking that the hermeneutical piece is human rights, and that will engender love and life. Thank you.
When I received the invitation to attend this program and entering the room and looking at this particular word, harmonious world, in our countries, there is tension, even between the Muslims. There is tension between Christians because there are so many denominations. However, when you understand the concept of love, the concept of humanity, you will promote peace and harmony in your living. Then I journeyed to America, and I saw totally a different world altogether. But I believe that there's no place like New York, where a Jewish person will stand behind you, where a Christian will stand behind a Muslim, where a Muslim will stand behind a pagan. That is the type of life that I love in New York. And I have understood my life, and I've understood human life beyond religion. Religion is there, but I will not accept my religion or anybody of my faith to really disrespect somebody of a different religion. We have to understand that our religion is built to bring us together and make us live together in harmony. Religion is not created to divide us, but people are creating situations whereby we will use religion to divide ourselves. So if we have people like us in this room promoting the concept of living together, understanding each other, accepting people's religion, then we can live a world of peace. So my take home from this gathering is New York should be, I don't know, but New York is a sanctuary of peace. New York is a place that people should come and learn from us. I think we also should allow people to interact with each other. Traveling is very good. I have traveled before. And when I went to India in Africa, when I was in Africa, I was like, okay, I hear about Hinduism, but I didn't understand it. Now I see people worshiping the cow, they bow. I did the same thing. You know, I tried to put myself in them and see how it is. I did not frown against them, you know. So we have to learn to accept people the way they are, understand them, because you have to understand that as you are accepting somebody, somebody somewhere is also trying to accept you. So that's how it is. And accepting each other and learning from each other will really make the world very harmonious for us to live in harmony. Thank you.
Since I was young, my life is less suffering and too much joy. When I grabbed to that joy, and I have a good family, good-looking husband, very good business. I have one boy, one girl. When I was younger, that was 30-something years ago. I have my own business. I'm working on the Fifth Avenue because I sell the lingerie, very expensive, my own line, to Neiman Marcus. They asked me, the owner, you have to be there every week. I forgot it's Thursday, to be there to help the vendor to sell your line. One day I was standing on the street, waiting to pass across to walk to the Neiman Marcus. Suddenly something hit me. I said, what about if my husband fell in love with someone else? What about if my children get sick? My son, so little, always very rough. I sent him to the emergency. So it was struck me, I need something. This is not enough. I need something to calm down my anxiety. Anxiety and negative emotion is so bad, control our body. Needless to say, when you have a body health problem, they're even worse. Two things. So how can I get rid of this fear of losing it? When I learn about Buddhism, it's I have to grab it because I really don't want to feel bad anymore. So how to stop it? I thought by 50 I should be get enlightenment. So I work hard. I go to every retreat if possible. Silent retreat, 7-day retreat, 14 days. But the thing is, as Giovanna said, it's inside yourself. Eventually, I found that what is the virtues, the moral, the precept, it's all by your heart. It's intention. It's the heart took us everywhere. It's the heart bring me to my happiness. I realized instead of thinking of that, why don't I just start it from right now? Be happy, even pretend. And how to be happy? If I'm not happy, my neighbors, my children, my family not happy. There's no way. There's no way happy. So this is the mantra. I'm very lucky. Eventually, from Mahayana Buddhism, I also met some great teachers from Theravada, from Tibetan tradition. They all talk the same thing. If you want happiness, you wish everybody happiness. It's so simple. Thank you, everyone, for this great opportunity.
I'm going to ask you to do something for me right now. I'm going to say the word honor, and I'm going to ask you to say respect, please. Honor. Respect. Honor. Respect. Honor. Respect. Aibobo. This is the traditional way of greeting people in Haitian Vodou with the words honor and respect. It is critical that we recognize one another's humanity and the contributions that each and every single person that we've encountered bring to the table. I'm very grateful to be here today in many, many ways. Among them is, it's wonderful to see how the definition of interfaith has grown and has expanded, that it is no longer just the Abrahamic traditions, the so-called world religions, Abrahamic traditions, and Hinduism and Buddhism, but that the African world faiths are also being acknowledged. This is a critical leap forward. My name, again, is Dowotidizia. My title is Mambo Asogwe. That makes me a high priest in Haitian Vodou. This allows me to train and develop adepts or initiates and bring them into our traditions. The traditions of Vodou, whether they're from Haiti, Brazil, Benin, Cameroon, Trinidad, Tobago, are eco-theological traditions, so that we are concerned with nature, with life itself. Our traditions are focused on the movements of the sun, the four movements of the sun. That defines our lives. It defines the nature of the kind of harmony, if you will, that is in the universe itself that we need to align ourselves with. We work in our traditions to make sure that we are in a state of balance. And our traditions are not, like so many of you, book-based per se, but that we ourselves, our physical body, our physical form, our mind, our spirit, become the word of the divine, that we become the act of divinity itself. There are some critical conceits that I feel we need to understand to appreciate what Vodou is. But I'm using Vodou primarily because it is the one religion whose very name scares everyone here and elsewhere in the world. It has been the most vilified, most stigmatized of religions. Vodou means peace. Vo is peace. The dun or du means to immerse oneself. It means to seek out, to be passionate in finding peace. And the idea of peace is not just for oneself, but it is for one's family, it is for one's community, it is this fervent search for peace for one's nation. Believe it or not, as many churches and mosques and spaces of worship that there are, for the millions of African descendants in this country, in this city in particular, we don't have a formal place of worship. None. None. So the Afro-Atlantic Theologies and Treaties Institute is working with a variety of leaders to try to change that. It's long-term work, but it'll happen. We're also trying to do things like engage more actively with institutions such as the African Union, the Organization of American States, the UN, so that our voices are heard. Finally, let me say that the process of convening various leaders, both within and outside of our traditions, is at the end about tackling systemic and structural racism, discrimination, Afrophobia, this irrational fear of the religions and sensibilities of people of African descent. It is about dismantling white supremacy and other oppressive tools that don't allow our humanity to be recognized, or yours for that matter. So it is in this way I will end with, again, this simple construct of honor and respect, because that is what we are here for, and it is honor and respect in the heart that brings about the harmony that we seek today. Thank you.
Let me just say this about the whole issue of what is a cult. Some people will say, well, you know, this person says the word cult, it's very pejorative. One person calls it a club, another person calls it a cult. Why don't we just call it a new religion? Well, there are cults that are not even religious, that are based on therapy, rehabilitation, theosophy, philosophy, martial arts, running, all kinds of things, multi-level marketing schemes. So the idea that it can be simply put in one niche, that it is exclusively a spiritual concern, is not accurate. I would go with what I would call the nucleus for a definition of a destructive cult, which was first proposed by Robert J. Lifton, a psychiatrist who wrote a paper called Cult Formation, which was published at Harvard University. And in my book, Cults Inside Out, How People Get In and Can Get Out, I use Lifton to propose that there is a nucleus for a definition of a destructive cult based on structure and dynamics, not on what people believe, but rather on how they behave. There are three primary core characteristics. Number one, and we can see this with very extreme fringe groups from all of our major faiths that are schismatic splinter groups that have become radicalized. Number one, there is an authoritarian leader that becomes an object of worship as the general principles that once defined the group or movement fade and lose their power. The leader becomes the defining element and driving force of the group, exercising dictatorial power without any meaningful accountability or transparency. Number two, the leader and group employ coercive persuasion and deliberately deceptive influence techniques to gain undue influence over followers. And then number three, if it is a destructive group, the leader and group use undue influence to exploit and do harm to followers and or society at large. They become ubiquitous through the social media, through people following people on Twitter, Facebook, every group that's trying to recruit unethically uses frequently YouTube. They use PayPal to receive money from their followers. I mean, so the net has become an incredible environment for these groups to become even more predatory. That is, your child, your family member could be sitting in your home, in their bedroom, being recruited and communicating with a radical extremist group, and you might not even know it. You could be sitting in the next room. That's the world that we live in now. And very recently in the United States, there have been a number of groups that have been criminally prosecuted. For example, polygamists, which there are about 50,000 within North America. They have been prosecuted for their abuse of minor children. There have also been groups that practice faith healing that have had parents prosecuted for medical neglect. That is, they allowed a child to die that could have been easily helped with basic medical care, but because of the group's beliefs, they were denied any access to a doctor or medication. And there have been groups like Falun Gong where they have encouraged people to believe that meditation can be an antidote to diabetes, and people have stopped taking their insulin. I met a young man who almost died 3 times because he was a practitioner and felt that somehow he could meditate his way out of diabetes. As the son of a diabetic, my father who took daily injections, I can tell you that that probably is not possible. As many times as my father would say a barucha, it was not going to get his, it was not going to replace insulin. And of course, here in New York, you probably have read about the notorious group called NXIVM, led by Keith Raniere, the so-called sex cult that branded more than 150 women brutally with the initials of the leader, Keith Raniere, who is now in federal custody in Brooklyn, facing trial in March. A number of other leaders also have been arrested, including one of the heirs to the Seagram's liquor fortune, Claire Bronfman, who is now free on $100 million bail. The Cult Education Institute was the first organization online to expose NXIVM. We did this by placing 2 papers, one by a psychiatrist, Dr. John Hochman, another by a clinical psychologist, Dr. Paul Martin, which broke down the methodology used by NXIVM to gain undue influence and exploit and brutalize members of that group. So that is the nature of my work, has been exposing these folks. And I started because of my bubby, who had passed away some years ago in 1986. And I'm happy to say that at Kivel, after those people were let go, a chaplain was finally hired, and a kosher diet was offered, and Kivel became a place where people could live in peace and dignity. Thank you.
I often say, don't tell me what you believe, show me. One of the sayings in our faith is we don't have to think alike to love alike. This was written by Francis David, founder of the Unitarian Church in Transylvania in 1565. Sometimes it's also quoted as we don't have to believe alike to love alike. We affirm and embrace all sexual orientations, all genders, including gender nonconforming. We're talking about LGBTIQ, all of it. My own journey as a gay man, I went through a lot of your faiths, including Baha'i and Islam and many Christian denominations, and I found I really wasn't welcome. I wasn't accepted, and so I needed to find some place where I and my husband would be affirmed and cherished for the love that we have for each other, and I found that in Unitarian Universalism. A lot of people ask me, so when did Unitarianism begin, or Unitarian Universalism begin? And I could say with Jesus Christ. Probably the big focal point was Bishop Arius, who was the bishop in Alexandria, Egypt. And what he said was actually what many people said at the beginning of the Christian era. They said Jesus Christ came with a very important message. We should listen to it. He came from God. He came with a message like Abraham or Moses or other people. But he was not God himself and is not to be worshipped. And it was for that reason they had the Council of Nicaea in 350 AD to counteract what they called the Arian heresy. So it was that Unitarian idea articulated by Bishop Arius in 350 AD that continued to live throughout the ages as Unitarianism. The Unitarians and the Universalists were 2 different denominations here in the United States, and they joined in 1961. The distinctive characteristics of the 2 denominations, I've mentioned Unitarianism, we believe in the unity of God. So we have a lot in common with the Jews and with Muslims in believing the unity of God. The Universalists, this is their thinking, and think of this with me. So you sin. You sin every day. You sin all the days of your life. And you live to be 70, 80, 90 years old. And a lot of traditions will say you are going to go to hell, fire, brimstone for all eternity. Billions and billions and billions of years, and you've only just begun. You haven't even started after billions of years. And so what the Universalists said, God couldn't be that bad. God just couldn't do that. That's just too mean. That maybe you might have to go there for a while, but sooner or later everybody will be reconciled with God and everybody will be in paradise with God. Maybe not at the beginning, but some kind of way. So based on this idea, the two denominations joined in 1961. The joke I like to tell is that we Unitarians think we're too good to go to hell, and the Universalists think that God is too good to send us to hell, so on that basis we joined in 1961. We read all religious texts. We read the Bible, we read the Quran, we read the New York Times and the Washington Post. We read the Atlantic Monthly, which actually is a Unitarian magazine. It was founded by Unitarians. And we affirm all faith traditions. We have Seder dinners in our worship services. We have sometimes Diwali. We do all kinds of ceremonies. We honor all traditions. We do have our own symbol, which is the lighted chalice. And we light the chalice at the beginning of our services, and we extinguish that light at the end of our services. So we do have our own traditions, but we love everybody else. All of your traditions we love.
Greetings. My name is Linda Golding. I serve as a multi-faith chaplain in a large urban hospital with a very broad range of religious and cultural diversity. I'm Jewish by tradition and practice, but in the hospital I have the privilege to serve as a multi-faith chaplain, which means whoever will speak with me, whoever will say something to me, I belong to them. Perhaps one distinction that I'll make among all the various religions is that in Judaism there is no intercessor. There was at ancient times, but when the temple was destroyed thousands of years ago and the diaspora of the Jews began, the tradition became individuals being able to reach out to God, to reach out to whatever holiness they were trying to experience. And I think as a chaplain, that makes a very nice connection because my direct relationship with individuals, with patients, with families, with staff, comes directly through my individual relationship with my religious practice. And I think we are all embraced in this remarkable healing aspect that is our religious practices, right, for each of us. And in the Jewish tradition, that could be called the Shekhinah, which is the healing aspect of God. The healing aspect of God is at the head of the bed of every sick person. And that means each of us, because we are also slightly unwell, simply by virtue of being alive. So the Shekhinah, the God's healing element, walks with us as well. Thank you for this opportunity. I realize this is probably not exactly the Jewish history that you were expecting, but it is the one that we do very much live in America.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Giovanna Maselli. So as you can probably hint from my name, I was actually not born in a Buddhist country, but I do identify as Buddhist. I was actually born in Italy, where it's not exactly the place where you have that much religious diversity. So growing up, shortly after kind of being able to read and write, I identified myself as agnostic. I did not have strong faith. I could not understand why I was supposed to believe in something just because I was born in that environment and I was presented with certain teachings. So I identified as agnostic for most of my life until I had the good fortune, or good karma, to find the Buddhist teachings. So Buddhism basically comes from the word Buddha, which means the enlightened one. So Buddhism is basically practicing the teachings that lead to awakening, that can also be called or described as the cessation of suffering, or of unconditional happiness, if we want happier. The idea with Buddhism is basically to create unconditional happiness. So regardless of the circumstances that are unreliable, are constantly changing. Right now, I'm not in Italy. I'm in the United States. I'm also quite happy to be in the United States. So it's a different thing. I'm here talking instead of being silent. Whatever the conditions are, which I don't have much control on, I can develop the ability of being happy, and also make me understand the importance of religion overall, and how it shapes the morality of each individual that lives in society, and how we're all kind of directed towards the same goal. There is just very different paths to get there, but we're all pretty much looking for cessation of suffering, peace, harmony. Begins at heart. Like we all want to be happy. There are different ways to get to it.
My name is Carl Morrell. I represent the U.S. Baha'i community at the United Nations. My primary portfolio item, which is at my heart, is men's contribution to the advancement of women. Not only can men contribute, we're going to have to find a way through past behaviors to allow them to contribute, because many men are willing to and need to find space to do so. As an American, there is a battle against the spiritual being, and that battle is materialism, known in the United States as capitalism. Many people feel ignored or underappreciated. They're being seen as marketing vehicles. Go into poor neighborhoods and you can see that people are not being underappreciated. They're just not being valued as spiritual beings. So how can we change and transform how the world sees us into how the prophets see us to be, as primarily spiritual beings? We work assiduously on that, from that perspective, as a Baha'i community, and we also see ourselves as contributors to this oneness of humankind, and we hope that we don't become an insular religious community, that we are part of our communities, that we are neighbors, and that we help each person that we come into contact with as seeing themselves as a protagonist in the building of a spiritual society. That we leave passivity that the marketers have, that they wish for us, into a proactive movement of each and every one, regardless of the diverse capacities we are each endowed with, to contribute their share to the betterment of humanity.